And welcome to another podcast edition of Rosen Sports Monday. And I am thrilled to have our special guest today, Cory Hepola. I've heard that name before. Wasn't he in broadcasting for a while? Yes, he was. He was at KARE 11, WCCO Radio, among other places in town. And I know you are involved in a huge project. But before we get into that, I want to thank, and we'll hear from them a bit later, our sponsors, Lexus of Wayzata, Lexus of Maplewood, our friend Charlie Swanson, the GM. If you're looking for that new luxury vehicle, that's the place to go. They will treat you like king or queen. And Broadway Dental, my friend Dr. Ben Stein. I've talked about Broadway Dental before, not just from a dental standpoint, but also from a sleep apnea standpoint. They get the right devices beyond a CPAP machine that's saved my life. And I could not encourage you enough to get a sleep test and then make sure that you take care of that, because it really affects your entire health. But Lexus of Wayzata and Maplewood and Broadway Dental are our two main sponsors. Cory Hepola, Vice President. Let me see if I get this title right. Vice President of Communication, Growth, and Strategy. Director, host of My Town. Do I have that right?
You got it, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's so much to talk about with that, but I know if people hear your name, the first thing they think of is your Twin Cities broadcasting background, TV and radio. When did you come to town? I'm trying to remember the process of getting into the business here and how it all evolved.
You know, it's funny, Mark. First, thanks for having me.
This is great. I'm looking forward to it.
It's a thrill. But I heard your last episode with Amelia Santinello.
Oh, that was fun.
And she was talking about like her path to get here to the Twin Cities. And, mine was long before I ever got here. I showed up here at KARE 11 in April 2015. But I had a 13-year career jumping from small market to mid-market to mid-market.
Which is typical.
Yeah, yeah. And I heard Amelia even say, like, things have kind of shifted since then. And certainly, as I kind of went along, people were like, you kind of have an old school path where it's like, hey, you go to, a small market and work your way up.
But you were not, did you ever get to the point where you're going even on during your travels that, man, I've hit the wall. I don't know how much longer I can do this. The pay is not great. I don't have to tell you that at that level. but you were still motivated to hit the big market.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as someone kept me employed, I was like always passionate. But I knew what I wanted to do at 8 years old. I told my parents, I was at the dentist at 8.
And this is where? Where did you grow up?
In Perham, Minnesota.
Perham, Minnesota. So that also sets the table for what you're doing today.
Yeah, small town, Perham, Minnesota, about 3,500 people now, about an hour east of Fargo, 3 hours northwest here of the Twin Cities. But I was at the dentist, and my mom recalls that, like, I came running out of the dentist because I was so upset. And she's like, what is going on? Are you okay? And I remember saying that, the dentist said if I don't brush my teeth better, I'm going to get a cavity. And Mom, if I get a cavity, they're not going to let me be a news anchor on WCCO.
Uh-oh. I would have been in big trouble. I had a bunch of them.
I thought that was a prerequisite.
That's funny.
You had to have clean teeth. But so I literally had that as a goal as a little kid. And I have journals all the way up, through high school on, what are you going to be when you grow up? What do you want to do when you grow up? And it was always, I want to be a TV broadcaster in Minneapolis.
And sports was kind of your first love in particular as well. You wanted to take my job.
Yeah. Well, I not take it. I wanted to work under you for a while.
I'm just kidding.
I've told you this, though. I have not to embarrass you, I have a sticky note, and I still have it. I wrote it in 1997.
Okay.
And it says, people I need to meet. And it says, Michael Jordan, Chris Carter, Mark Rosen.
Oh my God. You're making me blush on radio.
David Letterman.
Oh, wow.
So you were ahead of Letterman. Wow. You were ahead of Letterman.
Well, here we are. We all obviously have met along the way. And so when you look back, what did you enjoy about the business, especially when you came to town here and worked at KARE?
Yeah, I got my first TV job in Fargo. I will say, growing up in Perham, we got like 4 stations growing up. I lived out in the country, miles outside of town.
Sure.
So we would get WCCO out of the Twin Cities, and then we got all the Fargo stations. So I grew up really idolizing you and Ed Schultz, too, out of Fargo.
Oh, right. I know that name.
Yep. And I would flip back and forth between the Fargo station and Minneapolis. I was that kind of nerd all through high school of like, what's happening in Minneapolis? What's happening in Fargo? Right. What are they covering? And then you would start to see sort of the differences in market size and certainly quality of production because you had more people and larger things you were covering. But I went to college at Concordia in Moorhead with the sole, purpose of, hey, this is going to be a great place to get started, and then I can work in the Fargo TV market to start. I had my life all planned out, and I ended up interning at the CBS station there. So this would have been like 2002-ish.
Okay.
And I interned there. They hired me back. And then actually, I was a sports reporter, got promoted. I was in college, going to school all week long, and then weekend sports anchor on the weekends. But what I didn't realize is like how the business worked, that people were leaving. I was getting an opportunity because the station was being sold and people were worried about getting let go. So they were going for different jobs. And I was like, yeah, I must be just pretty good.
Right.
What happened though, the station was sold. And then I was laid off with a bunch of other talented people. And that was kind of the start of where, especially mid to small markets, were sort of consolidating a lot. And so I worked all through college, and then graduated college without a job. So it was really, I honestly, at that point, Mark, I thought my broadcasting career is over. I don't know. I applied for another 150 jobs before I got a shot.
That's discouraging. Yeah.
In Helena, Montana.
My goodness.
So for people who don't know, TV is kind of broken up by market size. So you have New York's the biggest because that's the biggest, body of people who could watch. 2 is LA, 3 is Chicago. Well, there's 210, and Helena, Montana is 205.
So you have a few people watching at night before they turn the transmitter off.
But this will answer your question a little bit. I loved it.
Yeah,
I loved it. It was exactly what I wanted to do.
Got in your veins, didn't it? It really does get into your system.
And I was covering Division II football, Carroll College. But they were winning national championships, and it was so fun. Like the community, the town, the school, everybody was just on fire for this college and all the players because a lot of them are local. And that was kind of the first, and it kind of leads into what I'm doing now when I look back. But they went to Carroll College, played in the national championship in 2005, and they sent me for a full week to report, cover on this team, and we shot so much stuff that when we got back, the school asked, hey, could you produce a docuseries on the whole road trip leading up to the win where they won the national championship? And we turned it pretty quick for them, and everybody was really excited about it. And I look back now, and I'm like, I remember how happy I was producing that. And so, yeah, that was kind of the start of
got the creative juices going.
Right, yeah.
Well, what was your road that eventually led you here, not too far away from where we are recording this right now at Ron Share Productions over at KARE 11?
It was a long journey.
I bet it was.
I sent you notes from time to time and being like, hey, just for advice and whatnot. And Joe Schmidt, too, was awesome. I would send him reels and be like, can you pick apart these things? Like, what am I doing? What am I not doing right? I haven't told you this. Even going back to college, what I would do is I would record your sportscast at home in Perham, and I would record it on a VHS, and then I would bring it to college, and then I didn't have any highlight. This would be like summer stuff, extra reps. I just wanted to get extra reps. And then I would just, there were no sports highlights there. It was just like, hey, can you turn the lights on? And I'll just read off the prompter. And then sometimes I'll act like the prompter went out and I have to read by notes and just. But what I would do is I would study. I'm like, well, if Mark is, commanding the desk, and what makes him so good? And I would kind of like watch what you do with like your hands or your movements or your facial expressions and all of that to be natural. And then I would kind of play back mine and be like, what am I not doing? Like not to like copy, but to more like learn. Like, because if Mark's doing it, it's obviously the right thing to do.
And I'm sure you found like it took me a long time to just say, well, be yourself. And that's truly what you have to be. When people say, what's the way to do it? I didn't really think about it that much other than having the enthusiasm to do my job every night, no matter how many losses I had to talk about. But that's truly it. If people see through you, they just do. And you found that out. But
that was the hardest thing, though.
Yeah, it is hard. It's very difficult. It takes a long time.
Even into my time at KARE 11. And I think a part of it for me was all of the failures along the way. you're just always trying to get after approval
Yeah.
and trying to get there. So like, to answer your question, I was in Helena for 3 years, another 150 resumes before I get to Elmira, New York, where Amelia was at.
Oh my goodness.
And that's another small market, very small.
It sure is.
A lot smaller than Fargo. And then from there, I was there for 2 years, another 50 some applications, got to Rochester, New York, which is a great spot.
You didn't give up though. It's easy to do.
Right. Yeah. And it was a great spot. That was a really good spot for me. Covering the Buffalo Bills. Now people go, oh, cool. No. They were 4-12 every year. Like this is,
back in those days.
Yeah. And then I was there for
Josh Allen. Yeah.
Oh yeah. We had, I can't even, Brian Brom was starting at one point, and then Austin, Texas, was there for
Good
a year.
Market.
Yep, and then Houston, and that was sort of like, oh wow, this is all paid off. All of the missing, all of the holidays, moving across the country 7-8 different times, it was all worth it.
And you were single at that time.
I met Camille in Elmira.
Oh, you did. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So we climbed the ladder together.
Wow, that's interesting to have that journey, because normally it's really difficult to kind of pair that off. You want to stay together as a couple and end up in the same market, not have to, commute or however you want to look at it. But it worked out.
3 years long distance. It was really,
my goodness.
I met her. I had been in Elmira for 1 year.
Yeah.
I was a sports anchor at the ABC, and she popped up. She was a noon anchor. So I was at the gym. She popped up for the first time after I'd been there for a year. And I was like, it'd be really nice to meet her. And
love at first sight.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I was persistent. I asked her out a couple times, and she said, yeah, maybe. Okay. And then the third time she said, yeah. And we've been together ever since.
That's fantastic. How many years have you been married now?
13.
You got 3 beautiful children?
Yeah, 10. And then the twins are 9.
That's fantastic. Well, so you're at KARE, and then end up at radio as well.
Yeah.
At WCCO Radio, which is, as you know, and I've been worked radio forever and ever too. It's very personal. You can be yourself probably a lot more. You have a lot more airtime. You don't have to keep things in segments and throw to a commercial break all the time. But what did you find the pros and cons of that experience to be?
Yeah, I'll say one thing before I get to that would be KARE 11 really saved me.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in Houston, we thought it was a regional outlet. So much like Fox Sports North here, Bally Sports North. But we were doing 24-hour, not 24, but a lot of programming. Mm-hmm. So it would be basically like heyday of ESPN, but at a local regional level. And it was called CSN Houston. And so I was doing Houston Astros pre and post game. We were doing, ESPN Sports Center style of highlight shows and whatnot. And that was really a dream come true. That's why I got into the business, to be able to tell those stories, to be able to interview athletes, to be able to, share all of that stuff with the audience. That's why I got into it. I don't know about you. You probably felt it too. I started to feel the shift there. And this is 2012, 13, where everything became more of a embrace debate and less about news or interviews or anything. And I was never meant for that. That's not why I got into it. I have a writing background, and I very much liked the writing aspect of being an anchor or a reporter. I loved being able to.
I agree with you.
I love it.
It's having the freedom too as a sports anchor to be able to write my own way, my own style. I didn't have to have someone else be politically correct, or I could express my opinion. They gave me the green light. There's nothing more powerful in that context than having that freedom.
And love to tell people stories and write those stories. And so, but I had kind of feeling the shift within sports broadcasting. Yeah. And I had also, you start to get older and you start to have different interests too. And so I had been kind of thinking about potentially, transitioning to news for a long time. The problem was I couldn't get an opportunity. Everyone saw me only as sports.
Sure. Yep.
And so what happened in Houston was it was kind of the early part of the bubble where the cable bubble happened, and all of a sudden NBC owned this station with CSN Houston. It was owned by NBC, the Rockets, and the Astros, and they could not agree on anything on the contract and the deal, and so they blew it up. 100 of us were laid off, and so now we just had our first son. Dream job, really, laid off. without a job, 6 months. I'm searching. I'm like, it's over. I really didn't
sucks.
know.
Yeah.
And KARE 11 saved me. John Remish and Jane Helmke said,
good people.
They said, I see it. I know you haven't done it, but we see it. We have a morning anchoring position. And I came up and I tested, and they offered me the job. And
a sense of relief.
Yeah, I mean, just amazing people, and I'm so grateful for that.
And you were there for how long?
4 years.
And then you went to WCCO Radio ended up being your next stop, which is a big transition.
Very big. I was probably a little bit naive to how big, because you're anchoring and writing and telling stories, but it's like somewhat manufactured, right? You have to get it down to a minute and a half, or you have to get it down to a 5-minute sportscast or newscast, whatever. And here it's like, hey, here's 3 hours.
Yeah, go
talk.
Yeah.
And there was so much I had to learn, and I appreciate Shannon Konepke, who was the vice president who hired me. And she, basically I went in there. They had contacted me and said, hey, we need this 9 to noon position. It's open. Would you be interested? And I certainly was, but I said, like, I don't want to have one of those shows that creates this divisiveness, this hot take, get people upset. Right. And I said, I know that's the way that talk radio works. If that's what you want, I'm just not going to be your guy. And that's totally fine.
Honest about it.
But I said, what we will do is we will get different voices amplified. We will talk about community. We will highlight some of the great things. And yes, when things are bad, we will hold people accountable. But it's not going to be this every day I'm going to come in with some hot take to rile people up. And I said, but that's who I am.
That's the world we live in now.
Right. And Shannon was like, nope, totally get it.
Be yourself.
Yep, be yourself. And I appreciate it, because they never once ever said, you need to cover this or you need to do that.
Well, the storytelling leads to exactly what you're doing now. And I want to delve into that. I think folks will find it very interesting, because it's a great talking point. But before we do that, let's hear from our wonderful sponsors, Broadway Dental and Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood. Hey, Rosie here for Broadway Dental and my good friend, Dr. Ben Stein. I'm a patient of Dr. Stein's at both his sleep apnea clinic and dental clinic. He has a newly renovated and conveniently located dental office in Northeast Minneapolis next to Certix. I mean, it's the most modern facility you could possibly find. Dr. Stein has a great chairside manner. He's nice. He's understanding. He obviously knows his stuff, and he'll spend quality time with each patient. We'll make sure they are properly cared for. I want to talk about, beyond the obvious dental care, is sleep apnea. I was diagnosed with it years ago, and I was stuck with that silly, cumbersome CPAP machine, and I couldn't wait to get rid of it. And I mentioned it to Dr. Stein, and he set me up with his sleep appliance area. And it's the easiest thing in the world. You just pop an upper, lower appliance in each night. My snoring is gone. My wife says I don't snore at all, and I get a restful night's sleep. And if you have sleep apnea, Dr. Stein is the best to see as well to help you in that area. So if you want to contact them in Broadway Dental, give them a call at 612-379-2300. That's 612-379-2300. Hey, Rosie here for Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood. If you're in the market for a new luxury vehicle, look no further than my good friend Charlie Swanson at Lexus. Whether you're on the west or the east side of the Twin Cities, they have got you covered with 2 great locations, Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood. Check out the all-new Lexus TX, a spacious SUV with 3 rows of seating and plenty of room for all your gear. Head over to LexusofWayzata.com or LexusofMaplewood.com for details and to find your next ride today. All right, back on Rosen Sports Monday with Cory Hepola. I'm just discussing his background in broadcasting, both at KARE and then WCCO Radio. And you stayed there until when? Because I want to get into what you're doing now and kind of jumpstart that conversation. Yeah. But growing up in a small town like Perham certainly gave you the background to do exactly what you're doing now. But you were at CCO Radio until
2022.
Okay, wasn't that long ago. Yeah. And then how did this happen? What's the genesis of It's time to rethink rural America, my town, exactly what you're doing. I think it's such a fascinating project because we want folks to understand how much fun this really is for you.
Yeah, it is everything I've really ever dreamed about. I'm so thankful to be able to tell these stories. 2019, Mark, I get a call from somebody I didn't know. His name is Eric Osberg. He's the rural rebound coordinator with the county of Otter Tail County. Mm-hmm. So you think rural rebound coordinator, what does that mean? Well,
it's on a business card.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't know what it meant. And he told me what it meant. And he said, look, my job is created to get people to understand the value of the lifestyle here in Otter Tail County. And he said, our work is based on the research of Ben Winchester at the University of Minnesota Extension, who has been looking at all of the data for rural towns and rural counties since the early 90s. And when you look at that, it shows that young people in that, I would say, 30 to 50 range, they are looking at moving to rural small towns. But now the narrative with small towns consistently is all small towns are dying. Mm-hmm. There's only uneducated people there. They don't want you there. And it's all these negative stereotypes. Well, Eric calls me and says, we need to tell our story so that people see us as a place to live, work, and play. And he's like, the popular thought around here would be, let's do some tourism videos. And I give Eric and Otter Tail County a lot of credit because they are very outside the box thinkers. And he said, I don't want to do tourism videos because you're supposed to do them. Everybody does them. Mm-hmm. He's like, I want to tell our authentic story. And he's like, but I don't know what to do. Do you have any ideas? Well, it just so happened that it coincided with kind of what I was dealing with personally, in that this was 2019. So I'm married. I have 3 young kids and I love where I grew up. But at 18, I wanted to leave.
Which was pretty typical of anyone in that age in a small town. They didn't want to stay. They wanted to leave and go explore the world.
And you should.
Yeah.
It's great. But I wanted to leave. And my parents, my family, everybody's still back there. I have, all across my journey, people ask me where I'm from. I always tell them, I'm from Pearl. Not just here in town. Like, I'm in Houston, and I'm telling people I'm from Pearl, Minnesota. Like, it's my forever home. And there's that sort of identity, but also pride in being from this small town. And so I started thinking about this, and I talked to them, and I pitched them this idea. And I said, what if we did? I said, consumers really like authentic storytelling. You look at, like, what are the top podcasts? Well, it's conversational type of podcasts. You look at what's trending on Netflix and Prime and all that. Well, documentaries. People love documentaries and docuseries and true crime, but they love all of these authentic stories. So I said, what if we did a docuseries where sort of the uniting story and force is, all right, I am 40 something and I'm married with 3 little kids and I love where I grew up, but I left. And also I didn't really fully take advantage of all that the county had to offer. So what if we go back under that lens and we look back at the county and we meet with people who choose to live there? And that's the distinction. People never look at rural as a choice. It's always what went wrong in your life to end up there.
Why are you there? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to flip that, reshape the rural narrative, show that, hey, talented people choose this. They want to live here. And just sort of show the county and the towns in it and the people there for what they are. Loving, caring, innovative, authentic people.
But how did it end up being the business model that you were now doing, that you expanded to the point where, these are videos that you're doing and you're going from town to town, state to state in our area here. And I'm anxious to hear about, the storytelling because of how people are going back to these small towns. So how did it end up being a project and your livelihood right now?
So Eric, that was through Otter Tail County. We created at that point, this is 2019, 2020. We created what was called Rural by Choice. Now, this was a docuseries. They were shorts. They were about 8 to 12 minutes episodes. And we met with people just around the county. And we did a season 1. We did 7 episodes. And then he said, we've just done summer. We got to show Otter Tail County in winter. So we did 5 more in 2022. Mm-hmm. So that's how it all happened. Now, what happened from there was somebody saw it and said, I love what you're doing for these small towns in rural America. This guy's name, Jerry Norton. So I'm kind of weaving a story here. But Jerry's from Crosby
Ironton,
Minnesota. And he's been in commercial real estate his entire life. And in 2017, he said, I don't like this industry. I don't like that it's so commodity driven. And what I want to do is I want to help growing companies see the value in small and mid markets and just provide those as options where most people don't even look there. So we can bring jobs and people and economy to these small towns. So he's been doing that. He started the business called the Brookshire Company. So really what that is it's economic development. And we work with a lot of small towns. Well, Jerry saw Rural by Choice and he said, can we take that storytelling model and blow it up? Basically offer it to other communities across the country who say, yes, we need help with telling our story. We need somebody to advocate for us. And then also they can use it as a tourism and workforce recruitment tool if they want. So he emailed me in 2022 and said, can you build that for us here? And so we did. And it's called My Town.
And you've expanded it. These are not just towns in Minnesota. I know I've seen pieces you've done in North Dakota, Iowa, Andrew Van Ginkel's hometown.
Yeah.
And others as well. So how do you select the towns, and what's kind of the criteria you use in order to say, yeah, that one works for what we want to do?
Yeah, we had 7 towns, so we have an application process. So we had a number of applicants because we didn't know. In 2023, we rose our hand, we created the brand, and we said, here's our mission. We are here to break down the popular misconceptions with the rural lifestyle, showing the opportunities in small towns. Now, are any small towns even interested in this? And we got a number of community leaders from across the upper Midwest who were interested in what that might look like. So we selected 7 in 4 states for season 1. So we did 4 in Minnesota, 1 in North Dakota, 1 in Iowa, 1 in Wisconsin.
Okay.
Those all came out last fall. We were selected into the Twin Cities Film Fest. It was a huge thrill. We were able to premiere there, and the people from those towns were able to come and experience it here on the big screen to see themselves and see their town on the big screen. And that was really cool. As we were filming season 1, we were getting so many requests on like, hey, what about us? Are you doing another season? So we knew that, boy,
you hit a nerve.
Yeah. And the audience is excited about these stories. And so we knew we were going to be doing a season 2. So last fall, we selected 8 more towns across 5 states, adding in South Dakota and Nebraska this year. Currently filming, and then the episodes will be out this fall, are already sort of fielding calls for season 3 in 2026.
How long do these segments normally go?
Yeah, it is just like an HGTV show.
I was going to ask you about that because when people watch their favorite HGTV shows, whether it's a fixer-upper in the house or looking at a house, it does. I find myself with my wife, we watch. I really like that show, and this seems to be a perfect show that would be on that type of station.
Yeah, you got to have the context. Can you get us in touch with them? That would be great.
I just remember the old days of Steve Adelman back in Sharon Anderson, back when they created all that stuff, and they were at KSTP. But that would be crazy. So, what have been some of the things that? Because I think at the beginning you said folks are going back now instead of leaving. They're going. Have you found a common thread about people returning to the small town life?
Yeah. Well, and you look now specifically since COVID. If any survey out there will what is the number one priority for millennials or Gen Zers? It's quality of life. And you know where they're moving? They're moving to a more rural, secluded, slower pace of life, and that's in our small towns. Nobody offers that better than our small towns. Before I go on, though, I do want to say, this is not a series that says small towns are better. Nothing is better. What we want to do is we want to introduce a small town, a different way of living to an audience who maybe hasn't experienced it or maybe has it on their heart. And we don't say this is better or that's better. It's just more so telling an authentic story so that people get it right.
Do you concentrate on a family or two, or to kind of centralize the way they live now?
Yeah, we learned a lot from season 1. So in season 1, there's a couple that I have like maybe 2 people in it, or maybe 1 person, or and there's a lot of pre-production work that happens. We don't just go to a town and show up and film for 3 days. What we've sort of designed now is let's have 3 people and 3 major storylines. We will weave together all of the themes that make a comprehensive story for this community. And usually, Mark, to answer your earlier question, they run anywhere from 22 to 27 minutes in that range. And, we're on YouTube. And so, not really restricted by a hard out at 24 minutes. So I was going to ask
you, where can people see this more than anything? That's YouTube is the number one option?
Yeah, I got to get better at this. Please subscribe.
No, that's okay. Go for it, man.
My Town series on YouTube.
Yeah.
But people can see the first 7 episodes and some content there. And we've got more and more coming out. We've got our video podcast with, different people, adding a voice in a different format from each community. That'll be coming out here this summer.
Join us after the Twins Day game on Thursday, June 12th at Parlay Kitchen and Bar for the Talk North Sports Report live show presented by Giggly THC Drinks. Catch myself, Mark Rosen, Lavelle E. Neal III, John Krasinski, and our special guest, 5-time WNBA champion Rebecca Brunson. Reserve your VIP spot now at fanhq.com. Don't miss out.
The economics play a role, because I'm thinking, you mentioned Gen Zs and the younger people now. And I know I was talking to my daughter about it when I was just starting out in the business. I lived around Lake Calhoun, whatever, Bethesda, whatever it is now. My rent was like $300 a month. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have any help from my parents, but I could afford that. I could afford my car. I could afford insurance, and I wasn't being paid a lot at WCCO. It's changed completely right now. I mean, unless you get roommates, I mean, you're talking $2,000 a month for a lot of renters just to have a decent place.
Yeah.
Is that one of the reasons why people are going back to, affordability is economics as much as the lifestyle?
Right. Yeah. Affordability. And okay. So to go back, at 18, we find with the data, 18 people still leave, right? They still leave.
Sure.
They go off to the big city. They go off to college. But what happens is people in their mid to upper 20s to 30 start to evaluate. You start to find somebody you love. You start thinking about what's next. You start thinking about what's important to you. And that's where you see what is called a boomerang. So somebody who grew up there, moved to the city, and now is going, wait a second, maybe that's back home. Maybe I want to raise my kids there. I know that's a good school district. There's a lot of great schools in rural America too. And that's another reason why when you're raising a family, you're like, okay, I want to be in a school district where, my kids are in a large school district here. It causes me a lot of anxiety.
Swallowed up. Yeah.
And like I played 3 sports. I was in band. I was in student council. I was in National Honor Society. I tried speech. I tried choir. Like you got to try things. And that's where here, specializing at 3rd grade, it's just different stuff.
Well, and I've noticed as well, because my wife and I have very good friends who live in Cold Spring. And last year we took a road trip to St. Joseph. And I think you're highlighting St. Joseph. But I went to that town and I went, oh my God, there's so much to do here. And there were a lot of young people there. Not just a great pizza place and shops, but it felt like one of my favorite go-to places is up in Walker, Minnesota. And that's obviously a very touristy area this time of year. But I found like St. Joseph had all that and more. And now our friend Ola opened a restaurant there. I mean, but you can find that you feel like, man, I just want to hang out here. I want to live. I could live here.
So that's another thing too, that people, yes, schools and affordability, quality of life, but there's a community aspect too. Mm-hmm. It's a neighbors helping neighbors. Yeah. And a pride. And there's a lot of people that go, you know what? I want to start my business. I want to start a business. And we've seen a couple that we're highlighting. They're from Minneapolis, and they chose to move to St. Joe's to start up, a couple restaurants that, by the way, like James Beard award-winning style restaurants, which you typically don't associate in a small town.
Yeah. Are there other downsides that people, I'm sure, will express that as well. Like you said, it's not a perfect world. No, we're not living in that made up Hollywood world that people think about, small towns.
Yeah,
Mayberry Mayberry.
No, it's not a utopia, but no place is. Yeah. Even in Rugby, North Dakota, a town of 2,000 people, about 60 miles south of Canada, people are moving there and they love it. And there's such a community aspect. But you know what they told me? They even said, look, not every moment's an Instagram moment. Mm-hmm. But here's what we have here, and here's what we value here. So no, there's issues. I mean, there's issues with housing, right? Like housing is a problem everywhere. You talk about affordability and yeah, it's affordable, but we got to build more houses out there too.
So what are the challenges ahead? How long do you see this moving on in the direction that you want it to be?
I wake up every day and I can't wait. I can't wait. And now I will say, like, I'm kind of like that, which I think you are too. I just have been blessed to be able to do what I love for so long. But I love it every day. We want to continue to grow this.
Mm-hmm.
We want everybody to see these towns for what they are. And for people that haven't quite seen it, who are listening and they're like, hey, it's part dirty jobs. It's kind of like taking me, the guy who's really never done anything, and throwing this fish out of water. Like, we were on a bison ranch. I was out branding cattle. So it's stuff like that where you get to experience it with the guy who has no idea, with, also then heartwarming and like learning why people choose that lifestyle.
And I would think this is better for your lifestyle with your wife, Camille, who was in the broadcasting business as well for a while. When you're 3 young kids, you want to make sure you spend as much time, because the television business, the broadcasting business, is not kind for the hours that you have to put in, the odd hours, the nights and the weekends. And this probably has given you some more flexibility to at least have that quality time with your family.
It's that's the most important thing for us. And she probably had better opportunities than I did. I was probably capped where I could go. But we made a decision when we were early on in parenting that it was like, we're not going to be those correspondents who have a bag packed that are leaving in the middle of the night. Just because I grew up with it. The 2 best parents in the world who were at my games, who took me to practice. And I want that for my kids. I want my kids to say, hey, my dad got me up in the morning and he tucked me in at night.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a great project. I mean, I don't know what's next. So you're finished season 2, or you're in the middle of season 2, right?
Middle of season 2.
Okay.
We've only shot 2 of the 8. So, in the upper Midwest, people want summer episodes. So the June, July schedule is pretty intense.
And how quickly do you turn them around to get them out on YouTube?
We can turn them pretty quick. We will get these out then starting the end of October through December, all 8 episodes, 1 a week for 8 weeks.
So tell everyone again how I'm listening to this podcast right now. I want to watch some of these. How do you find them?
My Town series on YouTube. Okay. You can find them all there. You can subscribe there. New video podcast, with different guests from each town. We've got the governor of North Dakota coming on.
Fabulous.
In July. So, and then the new episodes will come out in October. So yeah, please subscribe. You can watch there.
And there's probably an untapped number of towns that you could hit in this area. And you mentioned you stretched out into North Dakota. To Nebraska.
Yeah.
The whole Midwest is filled with towns like this, unique stories. So I would think there would be an endless amount of really wonderful storytelling ahead of you.
Yeah, I love it. We were in Watford City, North Dakota, which is in western North Dakota, just 3 or 4 weeks ago. Here's a town that was 1,400 forever, and then 15 years ago found oil, and so they experienced an incredible boom.
Amazing.
And they even they said it was like the Wild West out here to begin with, but they had the right community leaders in place to be able to, one, keep that place in ship shape, and now capitalize on that. You should see the amenities out there. Unbelievable school, event center. They've got a technical high school where they teach everything from construction to welding to anything under the sun. And all the schools in Western North Dakota can be a part of that and send their kids there if that's their passion and they want to get to work right after high school. Those are the towns. So we got back and I just couldn't wait to write it. So it's already written.
I think we've all been fascinated as in whatever road trip we take, where you're going through, you have to slow down, of course, from your 60 miles an hour or whatever, and you're going through a town and you literally go through it in about 2 minutes. There's a post office, maybe there's a bar, there's a grocery store, and then you're done. Have you found, what's the smallest town you think you've worked out of?
Yeah. The smallest town in this. So you would kind of ask too, what's the criteria? We are looking for small towns that are unique and have a different story to tell. I don't want to tell the same story 8 times a year from the same size or location or whatever. So like in season 2, our smallest town will be Linton, North Dakota, 1,200 people. But you know what? We produced a short little minute reel that we posted on social media saying Linton's been selected. Here's why. Mm-hmm. That's the best performing.
Are you kidding?
The best performing.
Linton, Linton.
Yep. The best performing.
Where is that located?
It is in South Central North Dakota.
Okay.
And not too far from South Dakota. Okay. So like that's how far south. But people are so prideful, and anybody who's ever set foot in there, like, I love it. I'm glad they're going there. So it's really cool.
Well, I've gotten a taste of it lately because my wife is from Westbrook down in southwestern Minnesota, and they, obviously she grew up on a farm. The mom and dad are still down there. Grandma was down there, and it's such a blessing to go down there because I grew up here in St. Louis Park, and I've never really been immersed in that community, and it is so. I'm not just, and then all the friends that she's made. I mean, we're just celebrating her birthday right now, and that they've become lifelong friends. They have so much in common. It's a wonderful way to live your life because the people that you grew up with, for the most part, almost to a person, remain your friends for life.
We were in Watertown, South Dakota last week, which isn't by definition like truly small, but people look at South Dakota and are like, well, that's pretty rural, right? Like Watertown is 23,000 people, and it's the fourth biggest town in South Dakota. Mm-hmm. But you want to know something? Like, everybody was helping each other in everything. Like, and that's how this story got done, because it's not free. We try to keep cost as minimal as possible. But the story got done because 25 different businesses chipped in to say, hey, we don't even need to be part of the story. We just want this for our town. And that's the true spirit of a lot of these towns, is like, we want the best for our town. We want people to know it. And too often the people in these towns, they feel like nobody hears them. Mm-hmm. They feel like they've been overlooked, and that they just want to say, hey, this is a great place to live and work. And that's what we want to do. We just want to tell their true, authentic story.
Well, you're doing it well. And it's an exciting project. I'm glad you got to share it with our podcast audience. Check it out for yourself. Cory Hepola, thank you so much for being part of Rosen Sports Monday. It's great to see you and talk with you and hear about your project. And I'm excited to delve into a lot of these myself.
Thanks, Mark.
My pleasure.